Welcome, everybody, to episode 300, the big 300 of WordPress Weekly for Wednesday, January 3rd, 2017, first show of the new year. I'm your host, Jeff Chandler, joined by Jay Tripp.
Hello.
John, welcome to 2018, sir.
Thank you. We both made it unscathed for the most part.
For the most part. I still got all my limbs, even though I opened the door at midnight and I heard a lot of explosions going off.
We had some too.
But none around here. It's too cold for that stuff.
And now we have matching scars, ankle scars from broken ankles. Gone 2017, when was mine? 2014, I think.
Yeah. Now there's a whole new meaning to the joke. Break a leg.
Oh no,
it does. Yeah.
But everything is going good here. We got an awesome guest on the show today. There's something I'm starting to notice a trend here. Matt likes being on podcast with big, huge, round number of episodes. He was just on Kitchen Think WordPress podcast with Adam Silver. He just recently surpassed 200 episodes, and Matt's joining us today for episode 300. Thankfully, with fiber internet, so all the audio issues we experienced with the Nashville hotel Wi-Fi have ceased, and now we'll actually be able to hear Matt preach about Gutenberg without those interruptions. Matt, thanks for joining us on the show.
Oh,
Good to see you again, Matt.
And this is fun to have like some pre-WordCamp and post-WordCamp.
This is fun.
Indeed. So let's get right into it. Was there any inkling or any possibility of you getting out of the boot as part of your entrance during the State of the Word?
We explored this very heavily. The boot wasn't solid.
It seemed obvious.
It was almost not like paper mache, but it wasn't like super sturdy. So not like going in or out of it might have actually broken the boot.
From the audience, it looked like leather to me, like sitting, off in the corner. It looked as real as a boot could look from the audience, I think.
I thought about having Matthias hide behind it and then for the demo just like pop out but you would have been able to see him from the side because we had a lot of seats like to the side. So it wouldn't have been that secret. And yeah, of course, anything coming out of the boot would have been ideal.
I think if we could have had like Mel and then Matthias, right? If we could have had like every guest that like all comes out of the boot like a clown car, yeah, it would have been pretty sweet also.
Next time. We'll put that in the writer for next year.
So there's so much to talk about here considering the State of the Word and Gutenberg. But before we get to that, something I want to ask you because it's been on my mind since it happened, and that was prior to the State of the Word, there was a round of poetry that was recited, and that poetry included an MFer bomb, which stunned me. It stunned a lot of people in the audience, which included kids, and who knows who was watching on the live stream. And I just obviously that poem had to have been read and approved by you. What happened there, and is this the last time we're going to hear a MF or a F-bomb drop as part of an introduction during the State of the Word?
I mean, of course, the funny thing here is that people who know me know that I actually don't even curse.
Yeah.
Not even like normally.
I mean, I've never heard you curse.
That, and automatic people are scared to curse because they think I have some sort of opposition to it. So to clear this up, I actually don't have any opposition to curse words. But I do believe in that context, it probably would have been...
The context of poetry?
In the context of being on stage and everything, it would have been good to maybe just like bleep it or censor it or just switch in something different there. It's kind of like there's a radio-friendly version of a rap song. So it was art, and the art expressed itself, and I think it was a beautiful, beautiful poem. But I don't think that we're going to try to have profanity on stage in future things.
I guess it depends on how bad future Q&As go.
Yeah, I mean, certainly not for me. But I love the poem. I hope we can have future poems or future art before the State of the Words.
I actually thought the poem was awesome. I mean, it was totally relatable to WordPress and the people that work with it. It's just a shame that one word kind of detracted from everything. It would kind of derail everything for a lot of people.
Since I can actually hear very well on the side of the stage. So I kind of missed that actual occurrence.
There was I had like the same thought process. I could feel the collective thought process of the room go like, okay, well, that is interesting that happened. And then I was like, well, clearly that had to have been like pre-screened. And so okay, what does that mean? Ah, and then I think David Bissett, somebody noticed that they did censor it on the live stream, which I
Oh,
thought
I
was
did. I was watching the State of the
yeah,
Word, and it was bleeped out.
and that's the right thing to do, I think,
On the
because you don't
video,
know
right?
who's
Yeah,
you don't
on the
know who's
video.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was good, but yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, so we're back at home here. The holidays are
The
over with.
live
The
stream. Oh, go ahead.
WordCamp US is completed, the first one in Nashville. What's your overall take, your review of having WordCamp US in Nashville? What'd you think?
Oh, I would definitely go back to Nashville. In fact, I think we will.
Well, it's pretty much guaranteed.
What did I like? Oh, I loved the city. It's my first time there. I'm born and raised in the South, so you know, Tennessee and Nashville in particular just has that great Southern vibe. I spent lots of time in Memphis before, but never in Nashville. I loved it. Um, the thing that took me by surprise was the smoking.
Yeah, too.
It's just been so long outside of like parts of Europe or sometimes Japan where like people just you sit down at a bar and someone just starts like smoking right next to you. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I just, I've become a lot more sensitive to that even. Probably more than even like 10 or 15 years ago. And then it gets in your hair. And I have this new thing that gets in your beard.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the Gutenbeard, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, I've never really considered what secondhand smoke in your beard does to you for like the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I think I just need to plan out. Because I went for the whole week, so I was there for a while earlier. So I got to explore some cool restaurants, coffee shops, did some runs around town. Definitely want to do that again. I just might need like an outfit that I wear when I'm going to someplace where there's going to be smoke. Because,
Right.
Did you have amazing? We were having this conversation on Twitter with somebody else about smoking. My cousin and his parents, they all smoke in the same house. So when I go over there, I plan it out so that I don't have. I plan when I have to take a shower, I'll go over their house first, and then when I come home, I feel like I have to quarantine myself. Immediately put my clothes in a pile. I watch them. Got to take a shower. It gets in my hair, and I hate it. It's a whole process. I got to plan out.
Hair?
Well,
you have no gets in your hair. What are you talking about?
Sometimes I have hair, like in the last episode. Remember, you said I was getting a fur ball up here.
You didn't have quite a fur ball going.
No, it's definitely. And the thing is, like, my parents smoked when I was little, and I don't remember it being that huge a deal. I do remember when my dad switched from cigarettes to vaping, though. That was a huge difference. It was probably in the past like 5 years, and I was like,
I don't mind people who vape because there's all these delicious flavors. It smells good.
it's strawberry waffles.
Also bad for you, so I'm not going to endorse it. Kids, don't do that. But it's true that from like a olfactory point of view, it's more compatible with.
Where did you run? I noticed it was like really hilly where the venue was. So were you like up and down like all of the massive hills, like training for anything, or it's because running is like a relatively recent thing, a couple of years for you, right?
Yeah, so I was kind of right on the river at the Airbnb I was at. I forget what was the name of the streets. What's the big street called?
Well, I think the big street's Broadway.
And then there's a street that's like King or something. That's kind of cornered to that. It also has a lot of stuff on it. So it's near the Hard Rock. So I would kind of go down the river there, which was definitely inclined, over the bridge down to the stadium. Then I come back down across the footbridge on the other side. It was pretty neat.
If we plan it out next year, if we coordinate with the city of Nashville, maybe we could have like a WordPress float in the Christmas parade.
Oh, it was the Christmas parade. Oh, that's right. It was that morning, wasn't it?
Yeah, Saturday morning.
Yeah, we'll see if the I've never been on a parade, so that could be interesting.
Like a giant printing press with the WP or the WordPress logo on it or something.
We just have a lot of people on our laptops and like a Wi-Fi point that goes around. That's our whole float.
Contributor Day is on a float. The big paper mache boot again and a W.
It'll look like the coffee shops where everyone's just staring at their laptops. No, the boot wasn't from us. The boot came from, I don't know, I guess the venue.
I wonder what else they have like in the back room somewhere, like big artificial boots and like, I don't know, boots with spurs. And I don't know, what else do you have? Like a
cowboy hat? That's
Yeah,
my favorite
maybe a
emoji, by
big.
the way. New emoji, the cowboy hat one.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And by the way, during the state of the word, I thought you were going to start it off by saying howdy, but you just said hi. So that's something I noticed. However, I think by the time the state of the word was over with, everybody had bingo.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was really cool how you sort of embraced the whole state of the word bingo game. I thought it was pretty cool.
Well, I just thought it was pretty clever.
Yeah, so let's get into a little bit of WordPress here. I mean, since we have you on the show, there's a number of announcements made, of course, in the State of the Word. One of them is that the WordPress Foundation has opened up now to donors of all kinds, not just big financial donors. And I think it was $15,000 given to 3 different charities. Tell us a little bit about that and the decision to open up the WordPress Foundation to anybody who wants to donate now.
Yeah, it's actually $45,000 total granted out.
Oh, wow.
So 15,000 each. It's just I think that one, we found that these programs, both the grants and the educational stuff we're doing, worked, and so now we have more reason to pool money together. There's also the fact that for maintaining the status of nonprofit we have, not too much of the money can come from one place. You've actually been able to donate to the foundation since it started. There was a PayPal button on there way in the beginning. I think we took it off at some point, probably when the WordCamp started getting really big. Wanted to not make it too complicated. And so now it's just bringing it back. And my hope is that we can get, maybe a couple thousand members. Would be great. And then we can, point that towards good causes and things that we feel like represent the WordPress community well.
Do you see the WordPress Foundation, now that maybe it's opening up, taking a more of and especially separating itself from the WordCamp aspect of becoming more of a role model, like a spokesperson for the WordPress project itself, like a Mozilla Foundation for Firefox?
Well, I mean, the WordCamp aspect is one of the subsidiaries, so that'll always be part of the foundation because it's fully owned by it. I could see us. I have been thinking more about this. In addition to kind of the educational and kind of like-minded organization support that we do, kind of like women in tech type things, I could see us moving in the future towards a direction where we're trying to help out journalism and publishing. It's kind of near to what WordPress does in our mission. And so some people have been talking to me about it. I've been just giving it some more thought. What would that look like? We've had an interesting 2016 and 2017 with the media in the world, with news, both real and fake, with blogs, with mainstream media, and just all across the country, there's definitely a lot of local media is being squeezed. So perhaps there's something that the foundation could do there, and more its philanthropic side.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see what's happening with the WordPress Foundation, and probably being able to sponsor more of those events, like the Do Action events you're a big fan of across the world. Like I could see that happening.
The name is so clever that I wish I would have thought of it. Like, how did I not think of this so good?
Yeah, I love that one too. Yeah. That's one of the things is there's so much like cleverness and smart stuff like the bingo, the Do Action, everything around the WordPress community. It's just fun to highlight it. So
I have a question about the foundation while we're talking about it, because the BBs we put on there years and years ago. They weren't on there originally. But like now that WPCLI is underneath like an official sort of endorsed project on the make.wordpress.org network, and I know it's sort of organic and kind of as it fits and as needs come and go, but what do you think the future looks like for other projects being on falling under the foundation umbrella? Like now, does WPCLI go through sort of the process of making its way to the projects page? And if there's something else besides WordCamps, if we start having the Enterprise Council, does that fall under the foundation, or is that a separate thing that falls under a separate arm? Or what does some of those things look like, do you think?
Well, Yeah, there's definitely more that could go under the foundation in the future. There's still the separation between WordPress.org and the foundation. Um,
Right.
so the official tax nonprofit side of it is deliberately small and tight. Um, and for the foreseeable future, it'll stay that way, just because some of the nonprofit things um, are good to keep kind of sectioned off in that area.
Right.
If that makes sense.
I think so.
But if there's any projects or things that feel like the foundation or WordPress.org could help with, like, I'm definitely happy to talk to them. There is something interesting there is that, if you want something under the Apache license, you go to the Apache Foundation. But for the GPL, the foundation there is really the Free Software Foundation, which has a lot of politics and policies attached to it, which not everyone agrees with, including myself. So
Right.
having a place for like a pragmatic GPL project to be supported by, I'd love for the WordPress Foundation to be able to help out there. Very much fit with the mission.
Yeah.
So as promised, and something I've hounded on, WordPress user survey results were published, not only this year, but the previous 3 years. Are there any numbers or any statistics?
It's almost like we're doing what we're saying we're going to do.
I know. No, I can't believe it. Yes. But
this is making your blog way more boring. Like, you got to expose.
No kidding.
But is there any
conspiracy theory there where we were holding all the results for ourselves or something?
Just add Matt Automatic. There's a conspiracy about everything. No. You name it, there's a conspiracy out there, and it's probably published in the comment on the tavern. But survey results. Is there anything in these results that surprised you? I think one thing that sticks out to me is the overwhelming majority of responses identified as male. We're looking at 78% in 2017, similar number in 2016, with only about 21% female. That's a huge gap.
Yeah, I mean, part of why the survey is not representative. So it's representative of the people who came to WordPress.org, which we knew from Google Analytics was majority male already, and that chose to take the survey. And if you notice, the absolute number of responses has gone down a lot. Again, not because necessarily traffic to WordPress.org is going down, it's because fewer people want to take the survey anymore. Right. So you're getting kind of a self-selecting group. I appreciate everyone who did, and that tended to be more self-identifying as male. I don't necessarily that means that we should draw conclusions about how WordPress's overall makeup is, or overall user base, or overall anything. It just, we can say that for this survey, it did represent mostly male responses.
Yeah, we talked about taking that question out of the survey that Mercy does for BuddyPress and BBPress, because I don't know how useful that it ends up actually being. Like, it's interesting, I guess, but I don't know how useful it is. And so if we only have like a brief moment of internet time to like actually get someone to fill out a freaking survey, I would rather that we have like some piece of data that's like really useful or actionable than like, what's your favorite, like, I don't know, like, who do you identify as, or where are you from in the world? I don't know. We can get a lot of that pretty naturally. I want to know, like, so what do you want us to work on, or what don't you like, or something actionable.
Well, it could be interesting to look at, for example, but again, this is only best if combined with other kind of demographic data, is just like, it might be interesting to look at, say, average rates being charged, hourly rates for male versus female, or by location, or by years of experience, or things like that. Like, those kind of demographic slicing for any of the questions could be interesting. And I think that's why we added it. But overall, and completely unrelated to this question, the survey results haven't like really stood out to me as something that's showing anything that would change the decisions we're making, or like illuminate a new path that we need to work on. So that's why I haven't highlighted them for a few years in the State of the Words. Now, one thing that could be drawn from this is like we'd love to have more women participating in WordPress, whether that in the surveys but that was regardless of the survey. That's something that I think we knew from, lots of sources of data, not just the survey telling it us.
One of the companies by the way, I don't know if did you get a chance to check out the Community Bazaar at WordCamp US? It's the first time that little event took place, and I thought it was pretty cool. People standing by talking about their local WordPress meetups and their communities, and they had little poster boards displaying all the good things about their area. I thought it was a neat idea. I hope to see that again in next year's WordCamp US.
That was part of the inspiration for mentioning Montreal as like a possible WordCamp US contender. Because I actually thought those were cities. When I first saw it, I thought they were cities pitching for the next WordCamp United States. I was like, oh, Montreal's here. Cool. I hadn't thought about that. Wait a second. Would that work? I was like, oh, yeah, Montreal's an awesome city. All Canadian cities, well, not all Canadian cities, but like Vancouver's cool, Montreal's cool. And I was like, well, what do we call it if we put it in Montreal? It'd be cheeky to call it WordCamp US anyway. But we'll see.
Yeah, but in that sponsor room, there was Google was there. Can you explain to us a little bit about the relationship, what Google was doing there with their booth, what they were showing off?
Sure. Google is like a search engine. They're trying to organize the world's information.
That's a good one. I mean, specifically with their booth and what they were showing off.
Oh. Sorry. Although I'm glad I got J-Trip to laugh like that.
Well, I can make him laugh too. Poopy.life.
Oh, yeah, you can't. That's big.
It's easy.
Yeah, Google, their booth was with XWP, correct?
Right. It was on the same booth. One side was Tide, and the other side was. I had a hard time figuring out what Google was advertising or what was going on. Something to do with performance.
I think that's one of the ways. I mean, Google and WordPress have been very complementary from the early days. I mean, they try to index the world's information, and we try to help people publish it, right? And so we also are two companies that I think have open web very deep in our roots. And so one area where we definitely overlapped is kind of security and performance.
I remember back to the Google Gears days. How do you make it work as good as it can? And it was really sad to have to strip that out and see that go. But there's always been, like a kindred spirit sort of partnership between, I think, what they're trying to accomplish and what WordPress is trying to accomplish. So Tide is neat. Like, I finally had a chance to look at it. Tide is like super dope.
I would say that Gears is an example of something that didn't work out that we tried. AMP, accelerated mobile pages, we're trying, and it's working really well. So I think there's as part of they did a really nice job kind of back in the Matt Cutts days. Like when a site was hacked, they would put a security notice and use like kind of the Google Webmaster Console, which now is called something different. I always forget the name. They've been renaming everything. To point to upgrading your version of WordPress and stuff like that. So think of this as kind of like a next level version of that. Using Tide, we can help improve performance on the case of themes, although in theory for plugins as well, doing some sort of integrated testing. But really security is what it comes down to. It's not good for any of us if a site gets hacked and starts spamming.
Right. Between Tide and the rising tide, lifting all ships and the ship of Theseus, I'm curious how many more ship metaphors that we have coming in the future for other projects and releases that are coming.
Ship it.
I probably need to read a biography of Gutenberg. Like maybe he crossed the sea or something and work that into the next state of the word.
Well, speaking of Gutenberg, that's
part of my reading list for this year.
Speaking of Gutenberg, I think one of the coolest and probably most important things that took place during the State of the Word was Matthias doing that live onstage demo of Gutenberg and listening. And John and I have talked about this in previous episodes about how pivotal and important that was to showcasing Gutenberg to an audience that maybe they haven't used it in a few months or whatnot, and to actually hear people clap for the accessibility changes with the color palettes and the warnings about using too many H1 headers, and hear people go ooh and ah with reusable blocks. And here's Matthias just building this wonderful thing using all these different blocks. It was a really great demonstration of what Gutenberg is capable of today, even though there's still a little bit of ways to go. But how important for you, or for even just a perception of Gutenberg, was that demo?
Huge. It was kind of a make or break. And but we did it with the confidence, knowing that it would be more of a make. I'm very proud of what the team's built and how far we've come. And it was good for people to actually respond to Gutenberg, real Gutenberg. Like, that was really the code running there live, versus a lot of what's been happening is people talking about their ideas or impressions of what it is. And often, sometimes, misperceptions or misconceptions. So you're responding to like what someone said about Gutenberg, not actually what Gutenberg was or is. So I also want to make it clear that it still has a far way to go. That wasn't a finished product. It was a work in progress. And I thought Matthias's demo was great. I was really kind of honored to have him up there, share the stage. It was fun sharing the stage. I got to share the stage with 3 folks this year. So
that was awesome.
Yeah, it's nice to see Mel Choice and Weston Reuter up on stage showcasing their work in 4.9, which change sets, just the customizer change sets ability, and to be able to share that link to the front end of the site and how that looks. I mean, just even something small like that is a huge convenience factor.
Now we got to get that for drafts, right?
Yeah, that'd be nice for actually draft posts.
Drafts.
Oh, yeah, really.
Like post drafts. Like, that's almost backwards.
Yeah, I actually used a plugin to do it today, to share a link to a draft on the front end, kind of like scheduling change sets. So I'd love to have that feature in Core.
Yeah, me too.
Personally. So you're keeping the product lead hat on for 2018 to make sure nothing stands in the way between Gutenberg and WordPress Core. And some of the other things you said regarding focuses for 2018 was Gutenberg editing, Gutenberg customization, and the Gutenberg theme. So just all Gutenberg all the time. But when we both on the comments and conversations on the web, we talk about there's this thing like competition. Why is Gutenberg being developed? Is it because it's to compete with Wix or Squarespace? Is it for WordPress.com to remain relevant? Tell us a little bit about why Gutenberg is being developed and why you think it is the foundation for WordPress reinventing itself and staying relevant and maybe hip for the next couple of years.
It's tough to answer, only because there's so many different layers in your question, which was several minutes long. And
I got to work on that, actually.
No, because you covered a lot of ground there. Yeah. I mean, all right, let's start from the developer point of view. A few years ago, said learn JavaScript deeply. JavaScript is the future of web apps. JavaScript talking to APIs, we think, is how web apps are going to be built in the future. And actually, it's how web apps are built in the present.
Yeah, right.
But not WordPress. So Gutenberg is by far the largest example of us both demonstrating that and using it ourselves. It was the whole point to bringing in a REST API, because we believe that APIs were important for the future of how applications are going to be built. So this is really the first major thing we're doing, using our own API, even that we brought in, well, now 2 years ago. I'll call it 13 months ago, 14 months ago. Okay, so that's from the developer layer. From a user point of view, you can see that if you do, the mission of WordPress is democratizing publishing. Part of a good way to test that is to go to people who want to publish and see, are they able to do it? And the answer is, honestly, since the beginning of WordPress, like, no, not always. And really what we've been doing the past 14-ish years is making it easier and increasing it so like an ever larger number of people can find it more intuitive and more possible. This is exciting as well, as over the next, call it 5 years, we'll have several billion more people come online. I mean, this technology is spreading really, really quickly. And I think it's important that the entire internet for the next billion people that come online isn't just Facebook zero, you know? That they are able to access and publish on the open web. WordPress is a great gateway for that, a great bridge onto that. You know, customization and writing you would just see it over and over again. These are where people got stuck. And the disconnect between what they expected to be able to do and what they were able to do, and then just trying to comprehend all the different kind of concepts of widgets versus blocks versus posts versus pages versus CADs versus stories, you know, all the sort of things in there. There's just a lot of And unless you had, you know, a Jeffro or a J-Trip sitting next to you showing you how to do it, big challenge. And by the way, for plugin developers, people selling things, web hosts, everyone else, if the users go away, all of those businesses go away over time too. Right. You know, it doesn't go away right away. I mean, it's just, I actually saw the news the other day. Jesse Gardner joined 10up.
Oh.
Why does that matter? This was one of the top movable type developers back in the day. One of the biggest advocates. There's still companies doing some movable type development. But, so, you know, if WordPress didn't do this change, probably 10 years from now, there'd still be some companies doing WordPress development. But it would be kind of the last, the last kind of breaths of it. And the first thing to go is going to be like the markets for buying add-ons. Second thing to go is probably the web hosting. Third thing to go is like all the freelancers building sites for fun or for money. And then the last thing to go is like the enterprise type stuff that has the longest cycles. But eventually it all goes away. And you get to the point where like movable type didn't adapt to the times. If WordPress doesn't adapt to the times, you know, that's all going to go away. And sometimes the most resistant to change might be the folks maybe say doing enterprise development. Because they're going to be affected, not the first. But I saw this amazing quote the other day. I actually have been meaning to blog it, so I will pull it up. It's from Michael Lombardi, who's a coach. I was listening to it. He was on the Farnham Street podcast, which is another awesome podcast. And he said, and he just was like a throw off. He was like talking a lot, but I like stopped, wrote this down. He said, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevancy even less.
It's perfect.
And he wasn't even talking about software. He's talking about sports teams, like coming in and changing things. And like, he's not related to Vince Lombardi, but he had a story about how having the same name like made that inspiring to him.
Doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah. And I was like, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevancy even less. Oh my goodness, perfect. It just hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, that's a great metaphor for what we're doing. Like the change is tough. By the way, I don't like change either. It's always uncomfortable, but it means you're growing. And you know, the irrelevancy is not exciting.
In order for things to get easier for most people, it has to usually get harder for some people, right? So like the developers that are going to, the inside baseball folks, like the people that are listening to this podcast that are using Gutenberg or testing it or that build plugins or themes, they're going to have a harder time for a little while learning JavaScript deeply and learning React and learning how to build for Gutenberg in a way that you know, it maintains their business or whatever it is. But that has to happen for the millions of other users to make it easier for them to do what they want to do on the web. Yeah, it's harder for us, and but we should understand. We sort of have a responsibility to understand that. Like that's part of our jobs is to embrace that change and roll with the times and focus on what it is that makes life easier for the people who actually hit publish on a regular basis. Because I try to blog at least once a month to try and uphold my .blog status, but hitting publish isn't always easy. So busy writing code instead of actual prose. But I try to keep that in mind with stuff like this. It's like if you are too stubborn about it, or gosh, I mean, I end up like my dad that way. If I start like, no, I'm not learning JavaScript, I'm gonna stick with, I really like this PHP thing. And then you end up stuck in your ways, and so
it's like the ability to gain a new superpower. Who doesn't want more superpowers?
Yeah,
or
right.
For the Inside Baseball crowd, which I'm part of, like, we talk about how if you're not embarrassed when you read your code from last year, you haven't learned enough. Like, why do we take that for granted with code, but not do the same thing with the interfaces?
Right.
Like, have we learned nothing since 2005 when we first created that WYSIWYG?
Mm-hmm.
No, we've learned a ton.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm so embarrassed when I look at it. We can do so much better. And by the way, we've started, and we are. And I just can't wait to get this kind of like big shift out, and then to really yes, I'm excited about release of Gutenberg because I can get rid of this thing on my face, but
well, you'll run so much faster. You'll be lighter. You'll be more aerodynamic.
Yeah. But more than that, I'm looking forward to all the iterations that happen once we have that out there, both from core and all the plugins and things built on top of it. Like this gives us all, just there's technical debt, right? It accumulates over time. We've accumulated a lot of interface debt, essentially, and technical debt. And we're sweeping it out all in like a motion that is change is hard, but it's worth it. Hashtag worth it.
We talked to Gary a little bit after the show last week. He joined us for like the WordPress Weekly after party, and
it was a super secret show.
Yeah, but one of my, and I've said it on the show before, but one of my concerns with Gutenberg is sort of the same concern that you mentioned in the State of the Word, just about bringing in the visual editor in the first place, bringing in the WYSIWYG and TinyMC, is that it's kind of been the same. Not exactly the same, but it hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot since it went in, 12 or so years ago. And that there is sort of a history of things going into WordPress core and then kind of staying that way for
post formats.
Well, post formats stayed there, and then we sort of silently put them under the rug. But Gary had mentioned that Gutenberg
is going to cool post formats feature. Have you noticed it?
It is, yes, I have. But that's not my question. My question is, Gary mentioned that there is maybe there's a transition team for what the actual grafting of it into core is going to look like. And so, aside from just code-related questions, like are we keeping Gutenberg references like in WordPress core, or are we white labeling and getting rid of Gutenberg 100% and calling it WP_editor? That's a question that I can ask on GitHub. But what is the actual process going to be of plug into core, and then what's the plan for maintaining it and enhancing it and making sure that it doesn't stay stale for the next? It is the editor for the next 12 years, but we want to make sure it gets updates regularly for 12 years. So is there a strategy in your imagination for what that looks like based on what we learned from having it stay stale for the most previous 12 years?
And I have long questions?
This is why the show is an hour and a half sometimes.
Yes.
Jeffrey, what's yours?
No, actually, I was just, you mentioned on the Kitchen Sink WordPress podcast, Adam Silver brought it up. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt on how this is going to take place, the core merger, and something Gary mentioned was the all the important stuff, and you referenced this, a transition team, thinking about that transition to make it go as smooth as possible for so many of us out there. So just your thoughts on have you given any thought yet to what this transition process may look like outside of the classic editor plugin?
I mean, yeah, I've given it a ton of thought. There's still some things to be determined, meaning that not that we don't have any idea, it's that there's a few paths, and we'll write one will get more obvious once we do steps A, B, C, D beforehand. So, I mean, there's some big stuff that I want to see happen for us to get a better idea of, say, like how Gutenberg is ready for the masses. The two biggest levers we have there are a core promotion of the plugin. So just a much stronger encouragement than we currently have to have people run the plugin, and a feedback mechanism there. And the other is shipping it to WordPress.com users. We could probably start with WP admin users and then shift it to Calypso. I imagine those happening kind of around the same time. I mean, that's been our best testing ground for just all the random edge cases.
What's the code name for the editor that's in the WordPress app right now?
Aztec?
Like Aztec and Gutenberg, they are slowly sort of becoming one and the same. Release over release, because I think it's on 3.1 or 2 or something now. I've watched it, like, just little buttons, little edges. They start to get closer and closer. It's kind of neat. Like, I love watching the change because I don't think it's subtle, and so I don't think most people see how subtle those changes are. But Apple's gotten really good at that over time, and so it's neat watching your folks merge those pieces together.
And when you think of the scope of what essentially the mobile teams are completely recreating everything we're doing with Gutenberg on 2 separate platforms with 2 separate code bases. So, I mean, they're like, it's actually pretty impressive that they
it is.
have been moving so quickly. Part of that was, though, because we started beforehand. So this has been planned to happen in parallel for a long time. So, I mean, the exact timing and the integration, I think that the bugs and issues that get raised from that wider beta period is really exactly what's going to determine the when, the how, the what of 5.0. The things I'm absolutely certain are going to happen before then are, plugin and theme author outreach. This is something I know Daniel Bakubir is very passionate about and has carved out some time to work on. It's something, it doesn't matter if we ship Gutenberg if we don't have the top 10 plugins there. So, we've had great announcements from Yoast, from ACF, from Gravity Forms, like from a lot of folks who have really gotten behind Gutenberg, and not just announcements, but code and blocks. And we're using that this is the period when we want that happening, because it can essentially be co-development. If someone gets stuck, they can talk to Matthias, and we can kind of get that out. Once we get into that wider testing period, we're going to be 100% focused on fixing those user bugs. So, and edge cases, on Safari, in OS 12 or whatever it is, the kind of the weird stuff that you need to polish for something at the scale of WordPress. So I would say now it's really top priority, besides the Gutenberg core, is getting the third-party blocks. After that, it will be promoting the plugin and the kind of wider usage of Gutenberg, getting as many places as possible. And then we start the launch countdown. And that's all standard release stuff.
We were talking a little bit about this with Gary about the there'll probably be a lot of time to go back and review once Gutenberg is shipped, the post-mortem and everything you've learned. But when you first made the announcement at I think it was 2016 State of the Word, we said we're going to redo the editor. I think a lot of people at that point said, cool, okay, we're only going to redo the editor. And then as it turns out, and something that clicked for me during Morton's presentation on Gutenberg WordPress of Tomorrow, was that it was never about just the editor. It was about something much, much more. And I think the communication aspect, I mean, do you kind of look back on it and say, boy, I wish I would have expanded its scope on that instead of people harping on the fact that we're just going to concentrate on the editor, or something along the lines of I don't know. We're just talking. Maybe there's a lot of instances there where probably communication could have been better in terms of the project, the greater scope of the project.
I have a follow-up question to that one too. So,
yeah, I mean, people bring their own meanings to different words, and as Frank Luntz says, it's not what you say; it's what people hear. So, it doesn't matter what we said. It doesn't matter what we communicated. What people heard wasn't
Right.
exactly the reality. And just very quickly, though, I feel like once the pushback on it not just being the editor started like in February. So that was pretty early on, which is fine. That meant that we got people started to see the plugin and the mockups and everything and understand that it wasn't we were using editor to be inclusive of the editing experience.
So my follow-up question is, now that Gutenberg has been in development for a while, is it starting to look and feel like what you imagined that it would, or that it should?
That's been the coolest part, because I've been thinking about this, for half a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
And even some, before that, the mockups that we showed in that old State of the Word that I worked with you on, I've been thinking about it even before then, kind of post-format days. Even in post-format days, we talked about, wouldn't it be great if you could actually stack the formats and have like different ones? This is going back way, way, way far. And previously we haven't gotten it to a point where it felt like a fully executed vision. And this is very much on the path and getting close to what I have been imagining and dreaming about during the daytime and asleep for a very long time now, which is just, I gotta say, one of the coolest feelings ever. Like,
Yeah.
because this is the whole, sometimes when you create things, you can sometimes imagine things far beyond what you could ever create.
Mm-hmm.
And getting the right people involved and the iterations and the feedback and everything, it's gone, it's evolving really quickly. And I'm excited we're not yet quite to like the original vision yet. I'm excited to get to there and then evolve way beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Well, because none of it really would have been possible without a really confidently JavaScript heavy web, or without a RESTful style API. Like, it just wouldn't, we weren't going to pull this off with like dynamic HTML 12 years ago. Like, the fact that Tiny MCE could even do what it could do 12 years ago was amazing. Like, it was just so incredible back then, that it was such a neat project that it was a no-brainer to pull it into WordPress core. So, we've known each other a long time now. So we've had the conversations about what this was potentially supposed to be and look like. And so it's exciting. It's cool to see you, kind of pulling it off with all the pieces in place. So I'm happy just for you on like a knowing you a long time level that it's finally coming to be a thing. Because there's lots of things that you hope that you're able to pull off, and you let go of some things. And this is one of those things it's hard to let go of. So it's cool. It's good. And so I guess my
takeaway, because you talked
go ahead.
about like what will we take away from this? I think the key is just persistence. We could have easily ignored the editor for a very long time after like previous tries. So that's what the lesson I would love everyone in the WordPress community to take away. Like, whatever it is that you can imagine that will make WordPress 10 times better than it is today, let's just be persistent. Keep working on it. And sometimes the world also has to catch up to you.
Right. Well, you mentioned having a good team, and Automatic. You've been very fortunate and have always had really great folks that I had the pleasure to work with for a while, and you pull in folks like Meta, and everyone kind of is sort of perpetually making everybody else better. It's exciting to see what everybody else is working on. But and during the State of the Word, and you brought Morton in as like the honorary, like Gutenberg team member, and but you had mentioned like, if someone is interested in pursuing something further and sort of being an official voice or arm or representative or what have you for the WordPress project or whatever else that they should try and do it or pursue it or whatever else.
I know
in
in the context of like European Union regulations, right?
Right.
It was actually one question that I had to graduate from Harvard to understand. His question in the Q&A was actually the only one non-Gutenberg related.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was.
I didn't realize that.
And so in my experience,
he had a great Gutenberg presentation. It was actually the funniest part about it was, as we were preparing that demo, Morton did it all. I was like, oh man. And Matthias actually arrived. His flight got in so late. It was afterwards. And so we were able to the organizers helped me pull like the video of Morton's presentation early so that Matthias could watch it.
That's awesome.
So I was like, oh, we want to cover some different stuff, but we also want to do some of the stuff he did as well, because he did it so well. I'm actually just waiting for that to go into YouTube so I can blog it.
That's awesome. So yeah, it reminded me that with Buddy Press and BB Press, like I don't really travel the world going to forum summits. Like, although I could, and if I did, I wouldn't. I would represent myself for the BB Press project to the best of my ability. But even though people might think of me as like the Buddy Press guy or whatever, like it's not like that was ever. No one ever told me that that's what I was. It just sort of organically became that, and I hope to like that I help those projects more than I like ever get in the way of them or hurt them. But like people are sometimes critical, and I know that that people are critical in the comments on the tavern. People are critical online. People are critical of Automatic and the Foundation and Gutenberg and what does it mean and where is it going and so one of the questions that I've had that I've wanted to ask you for a while, and I'm not trying to put you on the hot seat or anything, is like, how do you deal with all of the criticism? Like, I've known you for a long time, so I know you as just Matt. Like, I consider you like my friend Matt. I don't consider you like this I don't imaginary person that I can be mean to or bully on the web anonymously or something else. And so there's a lot of how do you deal with it? Because I don't know. My question is, how do you deal with it? Like what? Nothing in life prepares you for the influx of criticism of thousands of people. And so, how do you deal?
You reminded me of an old school reference that I'll make.
Okay.
I think it's good to meet your critics. Just talk to them and listen to them. And particularly moving from online to offline, I think it helps to see each other as people. Because online that can become a little bit abstracted. And the old school reference was there used to be the blog. You remember the one Wank?
Yep, I remember.
Yeah.
A very critical blog of me and WordPress leadership and everyone else, and like very I was in the UK and I reached out to the author and I was like, hey, do you want to just grab a coffee or something? Because again, I spoke about this at the WordCamp, like trying to see the smart, whatever the valid thing is embedded in whatever the criticism is. I had huge respect for her intelligence and her writing ability and everything like that. And I just wanted to understand more about why so negative, and also have an opportunity to make the case. Like, here's why we're doing X, Y, Z, or here's why it's not going to be terrible. And whenever a critic kind of opens up that opportunity for you, I think it's actually a huge gift. I've definitely tried to meet or talk to people who decided not to. They're like, it's not even worth my time to hear why, WordPress is secure. But, or whatever sort of thing I believe in that they don't believe in that where we disagree on. Worst case, you can still agree to disagree, but you've really understood and heard the other's argument. So that's all I go for. And it's kind of fun. Like I left a few of the comments on the 1-star Gutenberg reviews yesterday. Like it can sometimes be, especially if I'm in a good mood. It's like a good, nice thing to kind of go in there and just try to cheer people up if you can. Like even if they're really, really negative, like it doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world.
And on Christmas Eve, I read the "'Twas the Night Before Gutenberg" poem again. It just felt right.
Maybe that's the one we'll do before the WordCamp next year.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be a great poetry reading.
It's a little long, longer than my questions typically are. So maybe trim it down a little bit.
Those questions are fine. I was just this is a conversation, not like a Q&A. Like,
Yeah.
you'll know as much about WordPress as I do. I've been around it both for over 10 years now.
Yeah.
Right? You got the 10,000 hours, so y'all are WordPress experts.
So
I still have my one of the three most important people in WordPress.
Jeff, you got one of those?
No, I did not get one of those. I think it was you. It was John, Nason, and who else? Who was the third person?
Oh goodness!
Like, one of the three most important people.
Rabbit hole.
No.
But like, I sent out many of these certificates.
Oh, okay. There you go.
J-Chip can fill you in on the whole backstory. I don't want to get into it. But
I will. I'll fill you in.
There's probably about 100 of them out there.
Actually, I remember asking on Twitter if anybody had like a PSD template of that or like a picture, like a template. I was going to print myself up one.
Well, now you're diluting. You're just diluting the brand, and now Jeff, you can't do that.
When's your birthday? Oh, we can definitely get
Oh, it's just December 21st, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Something belated then.
And for Christmas, I think Andrea got him 3 years worth of statistics on the survey results. So it's going to have to wait until next year.
Right. Next year. So we're going to wrap it up here. There's so many other things we could talk about, but I know John's got to go. He's got to do like some political thing in his local town. But
obligations.
You said there is no default theme for 2018. If we get to the point where there's going to be a Gutenberg theme and that's going to show off Gutenberg in 2000, I guess the theme would be called 2019. Just in your mind, in your imagination, what does a Guten theme look like to you? I know that there's a Gutenberg theme that's based on underscores right now that people could try out. Is that maybe something that 2019 would be based off?
So I'll say the one controversial thing to drop the bomb at the end is I think the Gutenberg theme should be AMP canonical.
Ooh.
So that's on the code level. That's the version of AMP where there's no separate version. It's just like you use the markup from the main site. That would make it very performant. In terms of the design, I think, we make it, particularly once we get more of the customization stuff in, it's essentially just a layout framework.
I mean, 2017 was an awesome theme, the way things were laid out, and I just can't imagine what the designers will come up with, being able to take advantage of template blocks, block templates, and just plugging stuff in.
Well, it actually makes it way harder to design for, right? Designing for flexibility is much harder than designing something more like.
We learned that with the BBs and all the theme compatibility stuff that we had to build into it. Is just trying to make it by default flexible and work for as many types of themes and plugins and interoperable parts is just really, really hard work. But we don't really have any like direct Gutenberg support planned for the BBs because everything is so theme side user data entry focused. But Gary did show us that internally somebody has worked on getting Gutenberg bolted into P2 or like the O2 thing. So that's gets some gears rolling, because that was my question to Gary, and we talked about on the show before is
could you embed it?
What would it look like to give forum users or comment users that much power to have some restricted blocks to really curate their responses in a forum or in an activity stream or something else? Like, okay, Facebook and Instagram are kind of working on bits that are kind of like that. Okay, but
this is way cooler.
This is way cooler. And so once we have full Gutenberg powered themes, we can start to do the old school discussion topics of let's replace comments with BBpress threads, and let's just have it be a block that we can plunk into the bottom underneath the post, and all these things start to be.
I'm glad you said that, because that's going to be my closing request for the 300th episode for WP Tavern in 2018. I mean, you get J-Trip here every week. I would love to see Tavern in particular do the BBpress and comments.
Oh yeah, we're working on it.
Post becomes like a.
Well, little do you know.
Little do you know.
Oh my god! That's my number one request, because I think I actually think it would bring BBpress back.
I think so.
Because a lot of blogs will want that. Imagine one of these active websites like AVC, which is Fred Wilson or something, like they're using Discuss and stuff, but an actual forum would be so much better.
I think so too.
It was one of the most epic things when I launched the tavern so many years ago when we had that. I know it was powered by non-open source software. It was just I was a fan of that particular forum software at the time. But the tavern was the place. That forum was the place to be. If you were somebody in the WordPress community, you hung out there at the tavern, and I really miss that. And, probably going to bring it back.
Well, let's call it Advanced WP Tavern, and we'll make the new forum.
Powered by BB Press. Well, man, I want to thank you again for spending your time here on this show. You did not cut out once, so your fiber, whoever your provider is at home there in Houston, keep paying them because they did a good job. And really appreciate you giving us some insight into Gutenberg and some of the other happenings. Last but not least, do you perform or do New Year's resolutions? And if so, what are a couple of them off the top of your head?
I do. I'm still developing a few of them. Basically, every year since 2007, I've made a text file for the year. Goals dash, date, Y. No PHP reference. I think that the two I have so far this year are to be on my phone less and to read more books. They're kind of related.
You read like a ton of books last year.
I'd like to read more. So we'll see how that goes.
And have you read Ready Player One yet?
Yeah, I love that one.
Oh, it's a great book, and I can't wait to see the movie later this year.
Oh, that's right. There's a movie coming out. No, I love the book.
Yeah, it's an epic book. So that's going to do it for this episode, this edition of WordPress Weekly, the big 300. We'll have Matt back on for, I don't know, 350, 400? No, it's going to be sooner than that. I'll work on it. You can catch his blog postings and his ramblings at ma.tt and Photomat. John, where could people find you and follow you?
jjj.blog, Twitter and GitHub at jjj. But my New Year's resolution is to tweet less and blog more. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
No more tweet storming for you, buddy. No more threads.
I
Put that stuff into WordPress first.
Especially now that they suggest alternative tables.
Yeah.
Gutenberg storage. I mean,
there we go. That'll be a long blog post.
It's true. It will be. And now that like Twitter officially endorses threaded tweets, it's like not cool to do anymore, right? So just move it to the blog, I guess.
You can find show notes for this episode and all other episodes on wptavern.com. Follow me on Twitter at Jeffro, JEFFR0. Everybody have a safe, enjoyable rest of the week. We'll talk to you again next Wednesday afternoon. Say bye, John.
Bye, John. Bye, Matt.
Bye, Al.
Bye, Jeff.